I have a few 40k armies at this point. Necrons, Word Bearers, Gene Stealer Cults, but my first real love and the biggest army that I have is Tyranids. Having all of these armies has meant that I've needed to do a lot of batch painting, and that's helped me realize something. I just want to paint single minis. Painting a single mini means that I get to spend an entire evening doing nothing but painting one single figure, and for some reason I really enjoy doing that. So why don't I always paint single minis? Well, there are just too many advantages that batch painting gives you when you want to get squads done. It's more efficient to perform the same step on multiple models one after the other. It makes uniformity easier to achieve. It gives the paint time to dry on your first model as you paint your other models. Long story short, it's just faster. So today I'm going to be batch painting some more Tyranids, and I'm going to be doing it in the Hive Fleet Behemoth color scheme. I've tried a lot of different techniques for batch painting over the last few years. The trick is to make the project fast enough that you stay motivated while trying to get lots of models done, but also finding the time to put in the work on the details so that at the end of the project you end up with a quality paint job that you don't hate the look of. If you're trying to marry speed with high quality, the absolute best tool for the job is an airbrush. I can lay down tons of thin layers of paint on all these models in a matter of minutes. I would estimate that it only took me 1 to 2 hours to get the black prime, mahogany base coat, and sand yellow zenithal highlight done on 6 zoanthropes, 5 barbgaunts, and 3 ripper swarms. My goal with these first few layers is to get a good undercoat for the skin, with plenty of color depth from multiple shades underneath our first base coat. With each color, I'm trying to cover approximately 90% of the previous color. This will help achieve an interesting development from the shadows up to the highlights. I'm trying to keep a warm brown red in the deep shadows, and highlighting up to a fluorescent red at the brightest highlight. To finish off the undercoat, I'm going to be using a basic skin tone that has kind of a pinky yellow hue to it. I'm trying to use thin layers and really build this color up on all the skin, but avoiding covering the deepest recesses. If we do cover some of the shadows up too much, it's not a huge deal because we'll be using washes later on to darken the recesses back down. Now that the undercoat is done, we can finally finish the skin with our bright red color. Using so much yellow color in the undercoat means that our red is going to really pop in those highlights. It's satisfying just laying down this red over the top of all of our earlier hard work, but it can feel kind of scary covering up the undercoat. Just remember that the whole point of the undercoat is to create subtle shadows and highlights in the final paint job. And with that, we're done with the airbrush and back up in the cozy hobby room. My focus with the airbrush was getting the skin up to a decent point, and now that we've done that, we can move on to the carapace. The first step is just blacking out the carapace completely with a coat of black paint. I'm just carefully laying down black paint and being very careful to not get any paint on the skin. After that, and once the paint has fully dried, I'm going to be giving the black carapace a slight blue tint by washing it in a blue glaze. To make the blue glaze, I'm just mixing blue paint with glaze medium at about a 1-to-1 ratio. While I'm brushing on the glaze, I'm trying to end my brush strokes towards the parts of the model that I want to have the most blue tint. In this case, it's the end of the ridges of the carapace. I'm also brushing in the same direction so that if any brush strokes do end up showing in the final product, they are going in the same direction that my highlights will be going later on. Alright, so far we've been doing lots of steps that are easy to stay motivated while doing because you get such instant gratification. Airbrushing is so fast and easy that you just don't have time to lose motivation. The washes were also very quick and easy. The hardest thing that we've had to do so far is paint the carapace black, but that's just coloring in between the lines. Some of these next steps are really where motivation can start to waver when batch painting, so I'm going to take a little bit of time here to talk about how I keep my motivation up. There are really three main motivating factors that I've found to be very effective for my own personal hobby habits. The first one is seeing a part of the model come to life in a quick and/or dramatic way. Take a look at these teeth, for instance. All I'm doing here is adding white paint to the teeth. The contrast is bright and intense, and it only takes a moment to achieve this striking effect. It's very easy for me to stay motivated while doing this step on a ton of models because the investment of time to create the effect is minimal and the impact is high. For contrast, take a look at my process of adding the lines to the chitin. The effect is very striking. It's a classic way to really up the visual interest on Tyranid carapace, but the time investment is much higher. I'm having to very carefully draw these lines in freehanded and frequently dipping my brush and grabbing fresh paint. This is the time that we need to lean on the second motivating factor, which is focusing on the end goal. The end goal in my case is getting models painted in order to play games with. I'm very fortunate and have a couple of friends that I get to play Warhammer with frequently. We get somewhere between 2 to 4 games in every month, sometimes even more, which as an adult with other responsibilities feels like a great balance. Whenever I'm working on a project, it's often because I'm getting something ready for a game that I'll be playing in the next few weeks. Right now, while I'm painting these models up, I'm just picturing these zoanthropes shooting my buddy's Corvus Blackstar right out of the sky. It can really help to focus on something that you will only get to do after you've finished your project. Now, I'm not some elitist who thinks you have to bring painted models to your games, but I do really like the feeling of bringing completed models to our games. Now, if it's not getting ready for a game, then it can also help to focus on the projects that you'll get to work on once you're done with this one. I'm a strong believer in always painting whatever model is getting you the most excited about painting. While I was working on this project, a big end-of-year sale happened at my local game store, so I picked up some stuff for my Chaos Space Marine army, including Vashtor the Archophane. If I'm getting bogged down on some step of this project, I can just remind myself that I finally get to work on Vashtor as soon as I'm done. The third and probably hardest motivation to specifically focus on is improving my own hobby skills. With every project I complete, I'm trying new things, I'm developing new skills, I'm gaining knowledge crystallized by experience. It only goes so far just hearing someone like me say, remember to change your paint water and dip your brush frequently. At some point you just have to get after it and do it yourself. On this project, I got more time in using the airbrush, I got more time in working on my brush skills with all those edge highlights and freehand chitin markings. And I was also able to gain some new knowledge. I developed a new way of painting my Tyranids. So in the future, if I need to paint up a bunch of termagants, like I have 40 more termagants to paint up at some point, then now I have this new scheme and this new method of doing it. Speaking of skills I like developing, I'm going to do some very simple sculpting for the base. I wanted to do something just a little more than dirt and grass tufts on these bases, so I decided to sculpt some alien eggs to add to them. Now this is actually a very simple process. Just roll some Super Sculpey into a ball, jam it onto your baking sheet or tile, then take a ball tool and make some indents on various sides of the egg. I also wanted to try to make a couple that looked like they've burst open. For that, I rolled up a ball, then took a sharp metal tool and cut an X into the top of the egg, then just bent each piece outwards. To hollow the egg out a tiny bit, I just pushed down on the center carefully with the ball tool. Once we have our eggs the way we want them, we just bake them in the oven at 175 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes. While we are waiting for the eggs to bake, I'm going to get some dirt texture on the base. I like making my own texture paste for this, just because it's much cheaper than using the pre-made stuff. All I do is mix some glue, sand, and paint to a consistency that I want, and then slather it on the base. Okay, our eggs are ready to go. They've come out of the oven, and we've let them cool down for a bit. Now I'm just affixing them to the bases with super glue, and then painting them by brushing on primer, then base coating with gray, then a bone white color. Then I add a little detail by coloring the open eggs with some pinkish red. After that, we just have a few quick little steps to knock out before we're done. The gun still needs some edge highlights to define more of those edges, and we need to paint the orb sections red. I also used some yellow to paint a small circle on the upper portion of each orb so that when I go over them with red, there is a faint highlight. I wanted to add some more gore to the models, so I'm adding blood for the blood god to the fangs and scything talons. Finally, the last step that really marks the project as complete, I'm painting the base rim black. And there you have it. A bunch of new Tyranids painted up and ready to storm across the battlefield, spreading fear in the name of Hive Fleet Behemoth. Hopefully my tips for staying motivated resonated with some of you, but what motivates me might not necessarily be the same thing that motivates you, so let me know down in the comments what gets you painting and how you stay motivated as you work through your own hobby projects. And for those of you who are expecting more turnip content, have no fear. I will be getting back to the crow army soon because I have a giant crow monster to build. If you made it this far into the video, I want to thank you for sticking around all the way to the end of the video, and if you liked this video, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. Since I started, I've released a new video every 2 weeks, and I plan to maintain a similar pace this coming year. With that, I'll just say thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.